Hi, everyone. This is James Caleb Collins, and this is my presentation on violence against women for personal security. So, let's get started here. All right, so I'm going to start off with the definition of what is personal security when dealing with human security. So I have personal security aims to protect humans from physical violence of the state and other entities and is a measure of the well-being of an individual. Um, so I added to this cybersecurity and the actions that people take while online. I think that's something that has developed within the past couple of years with technology, um, computers, cell phones, everything. I mean, anything you put on the internet's out there, and you have to be aware of that, and you need to be able to protect your identity, your credit cards, your bank account, all that kind of stuff. So that kind of all falls into cybersecurity, and I think that directly correlates with one's personal security. So moving on, I have defining violence against women. This is clearly important because it's the topic we're talking about in personal security. So this, I have the United Nations defines violence against women as any act of gender-based violence that results in or is likely to result in physical, sexual, or mental harm or suffering to women, including threats of such acts of coercion, arbitrary deprivation of liberty, whether occurring in public or private life. And that came from the World Health Organization. Let's see here. So my next slide is violence against women, or violence against American Indian / American Native women. And I took this one on the far left from the readings that we had. I screenshot it and put it in here because I thought it was very eye-opening. So more than 1 in 3 American Indian and Alaska Native women, that's 39.8%, have experienced violence in the past year. And this includes 14.4% who have experienced sexual violence, 8.6% who have experienced physical violence by an intimate partner, 11.6% who have experienced stalking, and 25.5% who have experienced psychological aggression by an intimate partner. So overall, it's more than 1.5 million American Indians and Alaska Native women who have experienced some sort of violence against them, and that is a lot of women, unfortunately. And over here on the right, I found this graph, or not a graph. I found this information. It's some facts against the violence, and 84% of American Indian and Alaska Native women experience violence in their lifetime, the highest rate in the nation. Excuse me. So 56% experience sexual violence, and they are murdered at a rate of 10 times higher than the national average. This is for Alaska. So just to give you some relevance. And 96% of rapes are perpetrated by non-native men, but non-native offenders are rarely prosecuted on tribal land. And I will talk some more about that in detail a little later. And so, relative to non Hispanic white only women, American Indian and Alaska Native women are 1.2 times as likely to have experienced violence in their lifetime. The violence towards American Indian and Alaska Natives are most likely done by actually people who are close to them. If it may be an intimate partner, it may be a father figure, it might be an uncle. It's usually someone they know, not necessarily close to, but someone they've met before. And that's truly scary. So, uncovering the root causes. I have lack of federal response / protection. And I mean, so the federal government has a trust responsibility to assist tribal government in safeguarding the lives of Indian women. However, the U.S. Supreme Court ruled that tribes did not have criminal jurisdiction over non-Indian perpetrators. Federally recognized tribes had no authority to criminally prosecute non-Indian offenders. So the non-Indian offenders were not prosecuted, and that's why you see, if I go back one slide, that they're the perpetrators by non-native men, but non-native offenders are rarely prosecuted on tribal lands, and that's why. In my second one, I have men. So usually, if it's violence against women, as I said, it's usually a father figure, a husband, a boyfriend, acquaintance, someone that the women know. And, men have generally, if they're like that, I'm not condoning it. I'm just saying that, men are more likely to perpetrate the violence if they have had low education, if they had a history of maltreatment, if they were exposed to domestic violence as a child, that can have an impact on them. And it's usually if they witnessed it against their own mothers, uh, they will then regurgitate that, not regurgitate, but they will then do the actions to someone close to them. It's a cycle. The harmful use of alcohol and drugs and the unequal of gender norm attitudes of violence plays a role with the men. And men have a sense of entitlement over women. Some men do, not all men, but and some are just not mentally developed. So, yay for men. And lastly, I have, as a root cause, is the state of Alaska itself. You can see here, Alaska is ranking number 1 in states with the 10 highest rates of females murdered by males in a single victim, single offender incident. Alaska leads the way. I live in Nevada right now, and we're not doing much better in the third place. And I was born in Nashville, Tennessee, and they're also not doing better. So I guess as a country as a whole, they can do better. But since we're talking about Alaska, they do lead the way. Women are raped, beaten, and murdered by their spouses higher than any other state in Alaska. And it's not just the rural areas. So native villages and the tribes, they lack law enforcement. So it allows crime to run rampant, and drugs and alcohol can, as I said before, man, can induce a behavior that normally probably would not be there, but probably mentally is there. So it's just something that needs to be worked on. So the implications violence has on women, it can create sexual and physical violence on women can have long-term and short-term mental health side effects. It can affect a woman's reproductive health problems, unexpected pregnancies, hospital trips. All this can lead to depression, PTSD, and other anxiety disorders. And it can really bring down a woman. So do the economic concerns. Most women who encounter violence, they like to social isolate. They won't go to work. They won't go out and help provide for the family that they need to, or help provide for themselves. It just creates a strain. And if they have children, it can create a bad environment for the children, who can then repeat that cycle and cause violence as they get older. It can cause behavioral issues for children and emotional disturbance, and just later on in life. And I put stigmas down here because I think women, if they're going through the violence, they are concerned with backlash of men, or not just men, of just other people taking them seriously. I mean, you have this whole Me Too movement going on right now, which is a great thing. And if you get on the internet, you can just see comments about how they're making it up, like they were asking for it, and that's not right. You shouldn't say that. You don't know what they went through. But people just don't take it seriously enough, and it makes women scared to come forward. And there needs to be preventive measures in place to make sure that women can come forward and get the help they need and get away from the problem. So how do we solve the crisis? So like I was just talking about, we can provide a safe place for women. I mean, there women who are experiencing violence need help, and that they're in a vulnerable state, and we can have there's needs in place. Like there's the National Indigenous Women's Resource Center. They need help funding their mission, so women can go get support with other victims, and they have a place to stay, and it can get the much needed help they need. Uh, so there's a lot of loopholes in the laws when it talks about native land. So you can't prosecute non-Indian offenders on non-criminal jurisdiction in Indian country, and that was the Supreme Court ruling. And but actually, the Violence Against Women Reauthorization Act partially corrected this problem. So they provided federally recognized tribes with special domestic violence criminal jurisdiction to allow tribes with special domestic violence cases to prosecute certain non-Indian offenders. So that's a step in the right direction. The fact that that was even an issue, it's kind of crazy. But then we just need to fix the laws. Oh, sorry. And the state as a whole, and I guess the country as a whole, but the state of Alaska needs to address the issues head on. They need to provide this service to the Native and Indian women. They need to, govern and give help and assistance to the tribes and tribal communities, because clearly they are being mistreated by the government, and there's laws in place to, just don't seem right. So I think there's a lot we can do, they can do to help the Native and Indigenous women of Alaska. Um, some of the numbers that I looked at, it was just staggering to see. This whole report was very eye opening, and it's kind of, I hope they can get to the issue of it and help fix it. Oh yeah, this is my works cited page. If you're interested, I will add a document of that as well. And that is my report. Thank you guys.